Hello there. Welcome to the Angry Black Conservative podcast. My name is Dubs. I'll be kind of your host for today. Essentially, we started this podcast because had some things to say and wanted to talk about some things and wanted to do it in an environment where everybody was free to express themselves without being yelled at or called terrible names or having their personalities, shall we say, insulted and basically attacked for a disagreement, shall we say. And I've always believed in the notion that people who have a different opinion from someone else should be able to get together, talk about that issue, that policy, that whatever, in a logical, rational environment without, as I said, the threat of insult or violence, unfortunately. And even if you have robust dialogue, as an old mentor of mine used to say, you're still able to have that conversation in such a way where both people may learn something at the end. And even if you disagree, it's okay to agree to disagree sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big fan of it, frankly. So, in any case, I came up with this idea about having this kind of podcast where we could do that. So, in the future, I'll be debating other people, I'll be having conversation, I'll be interviewing people who have different opinions than mine. There's no point in me talking to somebody who agrees with me. Although I do like it when people start to agree with me while we're having a conversation. And there are times where I'll probably start agreeing with someone else who I'm having a conversation with. And I think that's what it's all about. I think that we need to get together, have these adult conversations about disagreements, and come to a common ground. The idea that someone is evil or a bad person or stupid for having a different opinion, that's always just rankled me. I think that the idea of being able to talk and express yourself in a logical fashion, the Socratic method, so to speak, has been lost. And we seriously need to get back to having that. So that's what this is all about. I do want to tell you a little bit about myself. I can't tell you too much because unfortunately, and it is an unfortunate factor in this day and age, that if you are saying the wrong things, it could potentially cost you. There are grave consequences for giving an opinion on something. Unfortunately, I find that most of the time those grave consequences are coming to conservatives. They don't seem to touch the progressives, they don't seem to touch the liberals, but conservatives are under attack. And I think that having more of those conservative voices out there talking honestly, expressing those ideas in a logical fashion is exactly what is needed. And just as a tangent, I'm a big fan of Dr. Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson, I think, explains the difference and the need for that difference of liberals and conservatives really, really well. And he puts it in the way of the business analogy. He says, if you want to start a business, you have a liberal start the business. And the reason why you need the liberal to start the business is because you need that creativity. You need that spark of an idea. And then the liberal gets his friend who's a conservative to basically organize things and get things ready to go, get that business up and running, the organization, the administrative part of it. And while that conservative is taking care of the administrative and the organizational part, The liberal is doing what the old professional wrestler Dusty Rhodes used to say, I'm geniusing, I'm geniusing, I'm getting things together. And that's what the liberal does. And they have to talk to each other, because while the liberal is figuring out the new product, the new service, and the marketing behind it, the conservatives in the back room making sure the bills get paid, making sure that all the permits are signed, making sure we have all the licenses, and taking care of all that stuff. And they need to constantly talk to each other to keep that business flowing, because obviously when you're in business, you need to constantly change. You need to constantly reinvent yourself, because the market changes, people change, some things get old, some things, some things come out that are new, technology changes, there's innovation in other areas, and we need that liberal to keep doing what he's doing, because that's how you stay relevant in the business world. But at the same time, you need that conservative to keep making sure that the bills are getting paid, and he needs to check the liberal. The liberal wants to go out and he wants to go to Canada, spend $2,000 on a trip to Canada to check out a new whatever, a new widget for that product that they've been selling. And the conservative needs to be able to say to him, okay, listen, you're going to go to Canada and check out that widget, but you can't stay in this particular hotel because it's going to cost us a lot of money. Stay in this hotel. Don't rent this car, rent that car. And he makes it more economical so that they can afford the trip. So they're not spending all their money on all the schemes and stuff, because when you do that, you still got to pay the bills, you still got to pay the mortgage, you still got to pay your employees. And so the conservative keeps everything going. Now, here's the problem with having a conservative, is that the conservative wants to just keep things the way they are. We tend to be steady. We have that even keel. The slow and steady wins the race thing. And the conservative will sometimes be stagnant, and you won't be able to make those changes. And that's where the liberal comes in and says, hey, we got to make these changes, pal, because this is happening and this is happening. So that's what we need to do. And then by having that good partnership, having that yin and yang, having that energy, and at the same time having that control, that's what makes that business just keep flowing. So we need each other. We need to talk. We need to communicate. We need to be constantly compromising with each other. The issue comes when the liberal goes too far and becomes a progressive. And he starts telling the conservative, hey, listen, man, I just told you that this is the right way to do it. And if you don't want to do it that way, that's fine, man. There's the door. And then we have the problem with the conservative when he becomes a nationalist. It's very easy, and I've noticed this in my life, and Dr. Peterson says the same thing. It's very easy to tell when a conservative has gone too far to the right, because you get nationalism at that point. You get that populist attitude at that point, and that's a dangerous attitude to have. That's when you start getting, Nazis and stuff. The liberal going too far to be a progressive, that's something that takes a little bit more finesse, takes a little bit more skill to figure out when you've gone too far. And normally, I think when you go too far with a liberal turning into a progressive is when you start having identity. When you start having the identity politics, and you start having the specialized groups, and you start having the victimization. This group is much more important than this group, or this group has got more victimization than this group. And I think that that's when you really start having that issue. And, that's when we talk about, sometimes we talk about Woodrow Wilson, the forgotten president, one of the worst presidents that we've ever had. He's definitely top three. Definitely top three. And I guess an argument could be made he's maybe top five, but that's as far as I'll go. He was a horror of a human being. It's a guy who believed in eugenics and kind of taught the Nazis what to do. But we'll talk about that on a different show. But just wanted to say that that's where I'm coming from in this. And as a conservative, I think that a good line of what is it exactly a conservative wants to do. A conservative believes in the Declaration of Independence. A conservative believes in the concepts of the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution, in my mind, being one of the most brilliant documents ever written. It's a seminal point in human history and human evolution. It's the first time that a group of people got together and decided on how they were going to govern themselves. That's really never happened before, and if it has happened before, it has certainly not been documented. So I think that the Constitution is a pretty good place to start. And in our country, the Constitution has power, and the executive branch has their powers, legislative branch has their powers, judiciary has their powers. And if they just stuck with them, we'd be fine, because that way the federal government would not be this bloated, ugly beast that we've got right now. The local government is the government that you're supposed to be focused on the most, because they're the ones that have the more direct impact on your life. Some guy in Washington pushing a pen who hasn't even been elected because he's part of somebody's staff is making policy. And I think that's dangerous. But I also think that until that changes, we have to get back control of the federal government. And so I really believe that the Constitution is the way to go on that, and giving the powers back to the states, or having the states get the spine to start taking the responsibility and taking those powers back from the federal government. Basically what's defined by the 10th Amendment, another one of the forgotten amendments, but the big one, because that's the one that states that whatever powers are not given to the federal government in the Constitution are going to be taken care of by the states. And we've gotten away from that. So, but in any case, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a middle-aged man. I'm married. Been married for quite some time. I can't give out too many specific details because, again, I have to protect myself. I have to protect my job. And I mean that literally. But I've been married for quite a while to a fantastic lady. I've got 2 kids that are fantastic as well. I got a great family. And I want to do everything I can to protect them. And that's why I'm going by the name Dubs and not telling you too much. But I will tell you that I grew up listening to a guy on WWDB 96.5 radio out of Philadelphia. His name was Irv Homer. He was a firebrand. And I'd listen to him Monday through Friday. And then on Saturdays, I would listen to a guy named Tom Marr. And it was the Saturday night shootout, and he would always say, let's go heavy on the light and light on the heavy. And unfortunately, both of those guys have passed away. But they introduced me to Rush Limbaugh. And then from Rush, I started listening to Glenn Beck. And then from Glenn, I went back and forth between Glenn and Sean Hannity. I don't agree with those guys 100% of the time. I also don't agree with my wife 100% of the time. But the basic tenets of the Constitution, the basic tenets of conservatism are still there with all of those guys. So we may all be running to the same place. We're just sometimes taking a little bit of a different path. But I think it's really important to understand that we need to get back to reading and living the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and something that I think really needs to be put forth more is the oath of office. And I know some people think that that's a hokey idea. I do not. I believe in oath. I believe in the concept that you can aspire to be better than what you are. And when you give that oath where you're going to publicly say that you're going to live your life by these tenets. And by the way, people have tried to pick on me about this, and they say, well, what if you give your oath to this particular organization and that organization starts doing terrible things? My answer to that is that I don't think with an oath you are giving your oath to an organization. You're giving your oath to a set of standards that you're going to live your life by. Now, those standards might be exemplified by that particular organization, But if that organization changes, your oath still stands to those standards, not to that organization. And I'll give an example. You have doctors will swear to the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. And if I'm a doctor and I'm doing abortions, I got a problem with that, because a successful abortion means you successfully killed a human being. I think that's doing harm. I think that's doing harm. And I don't say that to be cheeky or to be smart aleck or anything else. I mean that sincerely. Same thing if you have a doctor who's manipulating somebody into having a surgery. That's an elective surgery and you're getting some money out of it, but they really don't need it. I think it's okay to tell that patient, you know what, you really don't need this surgery. Now, if you still want to do it, that's totally fine. I'll be your guy. I'll take care of you. But I really don't think that this is something that you need. I think that that's okay as well, being honest with people. I think that that takes a lot of strength and courage in this day and age. There's a lot of conservatives, including myself, who've lost friends over politics. I've lost friends because I voted for Trump. I've lost friends because I'm a conservative and I've spoken in a conservative way, and I've got people attacking me and just saying horrible things. And these are people who've known me for decades. And suddenly, because I have an opinion that differs from theirs, or I voted for Trump, I'm somehow a bad person. And I just don't understand how that happens. So, any case, instead of trying to figure it out on my own, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on things. And I hope to hear from people and get some comments. And as I said, in the future, I'd love to have some people on and have some robust dialogue, have some real good conversation. I love going to breakfast with people who disagree with me and saying, okay, tell me what I'm missing, not where I'm wrong. Tell me what I'm missing, because maybe I am missing that piece of information that's needed to change my mind. Maybe I think this way because I don't know about this or I don't know about that. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with having that conversation with that person who disagrees with me. They have a different set of facts. Maybe the facts that they have come from a better source. Maybe they've got better research than me. Maybe they're smarter than me on this particular topic. There's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of people in this world that are smarter than me. So that's the purpose of this. I really hope you enjoy this journey of knowledge with me. I hope to continue to do this for quite a while. It's something that I enjoy. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about history. We're going to talk about public policy. I love talking about history. I'm an amateur history buff. I am continually fascinated by the Civil War. Fascinated by it. I think that it is a key moment in the evolution of humans, not just America, but I truly believe that it's an evolution of humans. It's the first time that we ever went to war to stop slavery. And I think that you can't discuss that type of action enough. So, in any case, I hope you enjoy what's going to be happening in the future. And I would really like to hear some comments from people. And if you disagree, that's fine, because I love when people disagree. That's when you have the best kind of dialogue. That's when you have the best kind of discovery. So thank you, and I hope to hear from you soon.